Hello, Bitcoin 2023. Thank you. My name's Tor Ekeland.
My name is Michael Hassard.
And we represent Roman Sterlingov in the United States v. Roman Sterlingov, a case in federal district court in Washington, D.C. On Thursday, while we were down here, the government filed a motion basically for a gag order, trying to get the court to order us not to talk to you about this case. Why? First, because this is the first case that is challenging Chainalysis Incorporated's forensic blockchain software, which is at the core of this case. It's our opinion that the software is garbage, that they've completely blown the traces, and that Roman Sterlingov is a completely innocent man.
Roman moves from Russia to Sweden when he's 14 with his mother, leaving his father behind in Russia. He gets into computer science, he gets into computers, and he learns how to, really early on, set up a wallet and buy Bitcoin. He then starts going to European Bitcoin meetups like this one and ones that we had the opportunity to go to in the last month. And he teaches other people how to set up wallets and buy Bitcoin. While he's doing that, and at one of these meetups, somebody tells him, you know, when you transfer Bitcoin to somebody who you don't know, they can check out your wallet address. And with that, they can see how much money you have. You need to employ some privacy tools and privacy policies in order to, guarantee your own privacy. And so from that point on, he starts using mixing services. The main mixing service that he was using was Bitcoin Fog. That's the mixing service that the US government is accusing him of operating and owning for over a decade. They're accusing that he's doing it completely by himself, which if any of you in the room know what it takes to operate a mixing service, you can't really do that by yourself.
And it's important to know that there's not a single piece of evidence in the discovery
Nothing.
Anywhere.
No corroborating evidence.
Shows him operating Bitcoin Fog. There's no server logs, there's no communications, there's no admin codes, nothing. When they arrest him at the airport after this 7-year, multi-million-dollar meandering investigation, they arrest him with multiple laptops, his Raspberry Pis. He's got a Ziploc bag full of every thumb drive he's ever had. He's got his handwritten notes with all his backup codes. He has his personal diary, a whole host of things. Not a single piece of evidence on there that he's ever operated Bitcoin Fog.
What appears to have happened is that the government relied on a trace from Chainalysis right from the outset of the case. The trace is a bit convoluted, and as you can see, the first step on the left from Roman's Mt. Gox account to whatever the rest of the transactions are that purportedly paid for the registration of the BitcoinFog.com ClearNet DNS registration, the first step, you can see the government's confusion. They have a piggy bank with a question mark on it. And this isn't something that we made. This isn't the criminal complaint.
And you should note also, if you don't know, it's not illegal to register the domain name for a website. So even if he did do this, which we think they just completely blown the trace, this is their main piece of evidence, is that they're saying that he registered the domain name, not even for the Onion site, just for the ClearNet site, www.bitcoinfog.com. They don't have any evidence that he wrote the website, ran it, or anything. There's nothing in any of the discovery showing him do this. They've got, everywhere you go, this kind of typifies the case. It's this multi-hop analysis with all these assumptions. And this is the whole problem with Chainalysis' software. It's what's called a heuristic software, and heuristic is basically the Greek word for guessing.
Yeah, and they're guessing all the way through here. Now, what happened with the investigation is it appears that they went to Chainalysis first, and they got this trace back. And from that point on, the case became, how do we prove that Roman Sterlingov operated Bitcoin Fog, instead of being a proper investigation to figure out who actually operates Bitcoin Fog? So right from the outset, the entire investigation was tainted with this confirmation bias and cognitive biases from the investigators and the prosecutors working on the case.
Yeah, and they keep on doubling down. You see them, at that moment where they're going to arrest him at the airport, you see that they're all excited. And I think what the theory is, my God, this case has been going on forever. We've got no leads. He comes to actually Miami In 2017, they put him under surveillance, like physical, really expensive. Lots of people making money on this case. They wiretap him, and then they put him under a pen trap, which is catches all your internet traffic. You know what they find in there of evidence of him operating Bitcoin fog? You guessed it. Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. One of the interesting things about this tracing is because it came first, right? And if you can see it, it's a little bit blurry, but a lot of these are Hotmail addresses on the right side of the image. So shorman@hotmail.com is the email that's kind of affiliated with all the ongoings of Bitcoin fog. There was a pseudonym that was used on the Bitcoin Talk forum called Akamasheti Omadetu, Japanese for Happy New Year. And when the government got the Microsoft subpoena returns for the Hotmail accounts, you can see the backup recovery emails for each of the listed emails here. So Shorman, which is the one on the right that paid for the high hosting domain registration. Shorman, the recovery email is NFS 9000. NFS 9000's recovery email is a professional work email for a guy in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley. And when the government gets this back, you can see them in the notes. They're kind of like, do we have the wrong guy? Is it maybe not Roman Sterlingov? I would hate to think that we have the wrong guy. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, I don't want to think about that. You see that a few places in this investigation.
Yeah.
You never see a direct piece of evidence. Everything is just typified by this hop, skip, and a jump. Like you see on this slide, there's no logs, no servers, absolutely no eyewitnesses. This case is unlike any blockchain prosecution before it because there is no corroborating evidence. It turns completely on this heuristic, new, standardless, non-peer-reviewed, unscientific blockchain forensics that Chainalysis managed to sell to the government in large part during this case, because this case starts right at the beginning of Chainalysis.
There's a whole bunch of details in how Chainalysis grew from a valuation of absolutely zero at the beginning of this investigation to what it's worth now. Now it's an $8.6 billion company, the globe's biggest tracing firm, that's implicating a lot of innocent people with their inaccurate heuristic tracing.
And one of the, there's so many, this case is so convoluted, we don't have time to talk everything on the stage. We'll be out afterwards, out back there to answer any of your questions. But one of the interesting, sort of side eddies in this case is that the IRS criminal investigator who starts this case, working on this case in 2015, a man named Aaron Bice, he's working on our tax dollar, right? He starts a private company for the sole purpose of working on investigating this case. It's called Exigent LLC. Now, fast forward, 6 years to the point where Roman is arrested at LAX, right? When the DOJ press release comes out, now mind you, DOJ's got a $44 billion budget, so if you're a company that's trying to get government contracts and get investors, proof of concept is being in a DOJ press release saying your stuff works. Exigent LLC gets top billing in the thank yous in the DOJ press release. 5 months later, Chainalysis buys the company for a sum that they will not disclose to us, and now they've got a revenue stream of $10 million plus from the United States government. To me, that's a conflict of interest because you've got the profit motive being introduced into law enforcement, and the concern of law enforcement should be the innocence or guilt of people. It shouldn't be careerism. It shouldn't be return on the private company that you're using to investigate the case that you're on while you're a public servant. And there's all sorts of stuff like that in this case.
This happens again and again and again and again and again in this case. One of the most interesting things that happens is right when he's arrested, before DOJ is even able to get their own press release out, there's a press release in Wired that was ready to go, trumpeting the arrest of Roman Sterlingov, the dark web cyber criminal who launders all this drug marketplace money on Bitcoin fog. Now, in that Wired article, you have a quote from Jonathan Levin, and he's very coy about this. He says, "This arrest proves that our blockchain tracing works." Chainalysis, a couple weeks later, they then do a Series E private equity funding round and raise $150 million on the news of Roman's arrest. And they've dug themselves in at every single step because they're putting profits over justice.
So another thing that's interesting here in this case is they say that Roman, since he was running Bitcoin fog, was getting the service fees from the Bitcoin fog service, which is a random service fee of anywhere between 0.5 to 3%. And they say that I love this. They say that those service fees were being deposited in his Kraken KYC account. Now, what somebody pointed out to us at one of these meetings we were speaking is if you're this super villain, dark net, Bitcoin tumbling mixing guy who's so good, you're so good that you don't leave a trace on any of your computers that the government seizes anywhere. There's no communications, nothing. What the fuck are you doing putting the service fees into a KYC Kraken account in your own name that you've got your passport photo in? It makes no sense, and the money doesn't add up. Because even when he holds onto his Bitcoin and it starts to appreciate in 2014, he's got a couple $1 million, right? He should have tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. But there's no eyewitnesses saying, oh, this guy's driving a Lambo. He's living in a studio apartment in Gothenburg, Sweden. His diaries talk about his money problems. The reason he gets arrested at LAX is he realizes, oh, you know what? I could lose all my money in Bitcoin. It's volatile. I'm like turning 30. I need a career. I want to become a commercial airline pilot. So he's flying to LAX to go take a flight school intensive in Sacramento when all of a sudden they arrest him and tell him that, oh, yeah, you've been money laundering for 10 years operating a custodial Bitcoin mixer named Bitcoin Fog. The thing that should concern everybody in this room is that this could happen to anybody in this room because this is completely arbitrary.
Anybody can be implicated by these inaccurate tracing heuristics that are being treated like fact by the government that's coming from Chainalysis. And I'd like to touch on the Kraken account. What's really interesting is this Kraken account where the government's saying that he sent all of the service fees from Bitcoin Fog. The patterns don't add up. You can see that he uses Bitcoin Fog as a user. He puts it into his Kraken account, and it kind of like deposit all at the beginning. Then you can see him living off of it. It's all withdrawals after he quits his job, and Bitcoin had appreciated. Then you can see him getting worried that he's not accumulating any new Bitcoin. Bitcoin continues to increase in value. And this is what Tor was saying when he gets worried and tries to find other jobs, right? So he tries his hand at trading, and you can see the trades in the Kraken account at around this time. He's not very good at it. He's not making a lot of money with the trading. So he tries his hand at a couple of other things. He sets up a music studio in Gothenburg. It fails. He sets up a VPN business called To The Moon VPN. And the To The Moon VPN, he registers the servers in Romania. So this is one of the pieces of evidence where you can see the government has nothing on him. And every time they think they're going to we're going to get the servers for Bitcoin Fog, they just fall flat on their face. And you can see the government getting very excited. We're going to go to Romania and get these servers for Bitcoin Fog. And they get them, and it's like this VPN company that had 100 users. Every time they're just falling right on their face. But they're so dug in due to their relationship with Chainalysis, to the fact that people at the government and investigative agencies are profiteering off of this arrest. They're going to work at Chainalysis. They're going to work at Binance. The whole cast of characters here is a group of people who are completely making money off these wrongful arrests because they're pursuing profits and fame instead of justice.
So Aaron Bice is that IRS criminal investigator that we told you about. By the way, the government put this in their gag order motion, saying somehow we shouldn't be showing the names of all these people who've been seeking press on this case. You may know this book by Andy Greenberg called Tracers in the Dark. This case is mentioned in it, and this is the first time we've ever had a case where we can read about our case before it's ever gone to trial. And we can learn stuff about our case that the government hasn't disclosed to us, like the conversations that the arresting agents had at LAX. And so they're telling us we shouldn't be out there doing press because, they seized all his money. So we're out here with the damn, tin cup. And they're pissed that we're out talking about, this case when they're the ones who've been going out everywhere talking about it for 2 years. Andy's book, I've known Andy for 10 years, so I found out a lot about their conversations with Andy, right? Has been optioned by Hollywood by, Alex Gibney, who's an Oscar-winning documentary filmmaker, right? They don't like it when the press is negative and we're out there talking, but they're more than happy to talk to the press, and they've been doing it for 2 years, and part of that has sort of been a Chainalysis marketing campaign. And this case is one of the main reasons you see Chainalysis all over the place, because we can see in the discovery how Aaron Bice is using Chainalysis over Treasury, and then this Catherine Alden Pelker, who starts as an FBI analyst on this case and is now the lead prosecutor, which is a massive legal ethics violation. If you know anything about legal ethics, one of the first things they teach you in law school is that you cannot be a material fact witness in a case where you represent the party, right? So we're at the first meeting with them, and I look at Ms. Pelker and I say, you're a material fact witness in this case. You can't be a prosecutor. And she just looks at me and goes, no, I'm not. And I'm like, I had to go back and look at the discovery. Her name's all over the discovery. I've never had a case in my 10 years as a federal criminal defense lawyer representing people accused of computer crime where I did not cross-examine the FBI agent on the case. But they're fighting us on that, right? Because what really happened is they didn't expect this to go to trial because everything goes to plea in the United States. But Roman's going to trial because he's innocent. He can't take a plea. He'd have to lie. So every step of the way, they're trying to sandbag us. They're trying to gag us. They've seized all his money. You know, Mike and I were about to get evicted from our apartments on this case until when we were in Europe, somebody like completely helped us out. Who else we got up there? We got you, Mark Carpello. Oh, we can skip the rest, right?
Oh, yeah, the Mark Carpello's tidbit is kind of interesting. So as you saw in the original tracing slide here, a lot of them are Mt. Gox accounts, right? We didn't know this until we read the book by Andy Greenberg. But there's an anecdote in the book where Michael Groninger is trying to set up Chainalysis, and Mt. Gox had just been hacked, you know, the big hack that happened in 2014. So Michael Groninger goes to Japan, communicates with Mark Karpelis, and was like, look, I'm setting up this tracing company. Let me try to help you find your missing Bitcoins. So Mark Karpelis gives Michael Groninger all the data that he has, and Michael Groninger takes a look at it. And then he goes back to Mark Karpelis and he says, yo, this data's all corrupted. You know, there's missing transaction IDs, wallet addresses don't have enough digits. Like, I can't do anything with this stuff. Like, do you have another backup? And then Mark Karpelis is like, nah, we don't. We got hacked digitally, but we also got hacked physically at our servers, and all of our data is corrupted. Now, this is the data that the government and Chainalysis are using to build their blockchain database, from which they're trying to do all these tracing heuristics. So the data is corrupted from the start, which is, we wouldn't have found that out if Andy didn't write a whole book about it. It's ridiculous.
No eyewitnesses. And what we found out, we put Roman on the stand because we were trying to get his money out that was seized, right? We lost because for all these technical reasons, right? But of course the court's like, oh my God, are you putting this guy up on the stand? Are you crazy? We're like, no, he's innocent. There's nothing that you can ask him that he's going to give a wrong answer to. And you know what? He was up on that stand for 2 days, and he was great. And the government got nothing. And what actually came out was how little the government knew about Roman Sterlingov, the human being. They didn't know who his family was, who his friends were. They didn't know what his job was. They didn't know how he made his money, right? And at one point in the cross-examination, you see Chris Brown, hey, Chris Brown just getting really frustrated and just going, tell us who your friends are. Tell us who your friends are. Okay, this is 7 years into a multi-million-dollar investigation where they want to put a man away for 50 years to life. There's not a single eyewitness saying, oh, I saw him drunk at a bar talking about operating this thing. There's nobody else identified that he's communicating with. He's not driving a Lambo. He's not doing anything. It just does not add up.
The government's so dug in that they're refusing to see. We're trying to talk to them about this. We're like, look, you got the wrong guy. You got an innocent person sitting in prison, pre-trial. Like, the fact that he's in prison pre-trial is a whole other thing, right? At the bond hearing to get him released, in the United States, you have 2 reasons you can be locked up pre-trial. The first one is that you're a threat to the community, like you committed some dangerous act. The second one is that you're a flight risk. So the U.S. government took a look at Roman's, the stuff that they got from him when he had it in his person when he was arrested, and he had 4 passports. He had 2 passports from Russia and 2 passports from Sweden. And the government was very quick to say, oh, like who would have 4 passports other than like a dark web cyber criminal? But if they had done their homework and they just reached out to those governments, they would have realized that all 4 passports were completely legitimate. In Russia, you have an internal travel document to go around the different oblasts, and you have an international travel document. They're 2 different passports. Sweden is very internationally oriented, so they want their citizens to be able to go to, say, Israel and then go to Jordan, so they give their citizens a backup passport. All of his passports were legitimate, but it's the basis upon which the government, the court was saying that he's a flight risk. He's now been in prison for over 2.5 years, waiting for this trial. He's in Northern Neck Regional Jail in Warsaw, Virginia, 2.5 hours outside of D.C. It's so difficult for us to go there. We're getting stopped from going there. We're getting sandbagged at every level.
They're doing everything they can so that we can't talk to him. They said that, oh, you guys tried to smuggle in contraband, a pack of cigarettes. Total crap, right? And Roman, we're talking to him the other day, he's telling me about somebody in there who's facing a federal trial right now who they're not letting see his lawyers. And the reason for that is that this little state regional jail there makes a ton of money from the federal government on its contract. So what's going on is this little silent game where they're like, we're going to do good stuff for you, DOJ, because we love your money, right? Incredibly frustrating.
It's unbelievably frustrating. Some of these other characters on here, so Yuli Lee, she was the original prosecutor on the case. She's now head of legal at Chainalysis. You have you have Tigran Gambaryan and Matt Price. They were the arresting agents, and they're featured prominently in the book by Andy Greenberg called Tracers in the Dark. And they're both working at Binance now. And you have Zia Faruqi. He was the original prosecutor with Yuli Lee on the case, and he's now a magistrate judge in D.C., and he's making decisions that are favorable to this blockchain tracing, accepting it as evidence in other kinds of cases.
I think that's a really interesting insight into how this kind of crap spreads, right? So here's this prosecutor on this case who's been working closely with Chainalysis, and I know who talked extensively with Andy Greenberg. I even know that Andy asked him a question, how do you know this stuff works? Because I asked Andy, because I was like, Andy, how the hell do you know any of this shit works? I don't see any peer-reviewed papers. I don't see any verification rates. What's the false positive rate? And he got really, really silent. And he said when he asked Zia that, Zia just said, oh, yeah, well, we've had successful prosecutions with it, right? Well, okay, that doesn't show it works. It shows that you've actually thrown people in jail, right? And now Faruqi's on the bench writing decisions saying how good this kind of software is. Well, you know what? If he leaves his magistrate job, he's going to get a really nice job in the private sector. I think this kind of revolving door between DOJ, it happens at the SEC and everything, where they kind of quietly favor companies that they know later are going to give them like 7-figure jobs. I think it needs to be made illegal. And I think this case is a great example of why. Because the profit motive, the careerism is leading to this confirmation bias, and we have a beautiful confirmation bias expert we just got that we're trying to find $15,000 for. Please, trial gods. But it just distorts everything. Everywhere they turn, they just look the other way when there's contrary evidence.
Yeah, so right now Roman's facing 50 to life. We're going to trial on September 14th. We have an upcoming hearing called a Daubert hearing that's going to be on June 16th and June 23rd in D.C. And these are very important hearings because this is our opportunity to knock out all the scientific evidence that the government's bringing forth against Roman. So we got some experts for this. We've been doing a tour. We went to, where did we go? We went to
Munich, Zurich,
Munich, Berlin, Stuttgart.
Mexico
Some of you
City.
guys, I saw you here today. We had a great time with you guys in Stuttgart. Then we went to Mexico City. Now we're down here. And, on this journey, we've gotten a chance to talk to so many people who are bringing us all this new insight that sometimes we go over. Like the fact that we didn't recognize how ridiculous it was that a dark web cyber criminal would have used an open source, like a KYC Kraken account.
Or somebody pointed out,
Pointing out the obvious is what you guys are helping us with.
Someone pointed out, where are the private keys? They don't have any keys in this case.
No keys.
No keys. No logs. No communications. No servers.
They got nothing.
I don't think there's any, well, I know there's no blockchain case like this. And this is the first time that anybody's taking this to trial. If you go look at all these other cases, they all take a plea. Or there's like tons of evidence, corroborating evidence, that you can't look at these traces in these other cases and say that they're definitive. Because there's too much evidence in the other cases, like in this case called Harmon, the guy accidentally took a photo of the admin panel, to his tumbling site with his Google glasses.
That was the Helix tumbling site. And the other thing we're seeing is that all the other cases with the corroborating evidence, they wind up in a plea. So this is the first time that a defendant is challenging this kind of blockchain forensics at trial publicly, and Roman is intent on proving his innocence.
And we'll be out back. If you want to ask us any of the questions, you can get more information on the website, www.torekeland.com. Feel free to reach out to us. If you have any ideas, we are really, really grateful for the community support, and so is Roman. He knows that the community is behind him. We tell him every time we go out and talk, and he's very, very grateful because it's lifted his spirits.
This is a crowd-funded defense, everybody. They took all of Roman's money. We put everything we have in it, Anything you can provide and give to Roman's cause, please do. Please consider donating. We have the links on our website. We take Bitcoin, Monero, Fiat, Lightning. You reach out to us, we'll make it work for whatever you want to pay in. But yeah, this is our opportunity to take down Chainalysis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miami, for the last 3 years in this amazing city. The whole world shut down, but Miami welcomed us with open arms. We want to show Bitcoin to the whole world. We are taking the conference on the road to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. Nashville. Bitcoin 2024 is coming to Nashville in Tennessee, a city that is known as a music and freedom city. Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville from July 25th to 27th.